Okay, so Psalm 16. This is a philosophical psalm. Opening line says, "Protect me, God." Let's read it actually. 11 lines. Let's read it. Protect me, O God, for I seek refuge in you. I say to the Lord, "You are my Lord." I mean, those of you who know Hebrew already see the problems with translation. Tovati bal elecha. Your goodness, and let's actually interpret this. Your goodness is not upon, my goodness is not upon you. That's kind of literal, I think. So there are two interpretations. One is, I'm saying among the medieval commentators, the Rishonim, and I think it's basically there are two interpretations. One is that the goodness, my goodness, it's unearned by me. Bal alecha. It's not. You have no obligation to have given me this good. That's Rashi. The Radak, who always seems to emphasize, he pushes David much more to the extreme, it seems, in our experience, than Rashi, who's much more conservative. They have a very different view of what the Psalms are. The Radak says, "My goodness is far from you." It's away. It is. So here, there's the despair of the speaker saying, "I'm doing all of this good, but it doesn't go up to you." It's also important to point out, I didn't mention this, the first line starts Amart, and the Rishonim discuss who is he speaking to, and let's say the consensus view is he's speaking to his soul. You said, my soul said. Why he personifies the soul, we have to discuss. Let's read it. My soul said. So the soul now is the one acting in bad faith. It's being pushed off. I didn't do it. It's the soul that did it. And the way the Radak continues to learn, and we're just going to go his direction because it just changes the whole poem. The Kedoshim Asher Ba'aretz Heimo ve'ediri kol chafetzi ba. So you might have thought that that the translation here in spirit is correct. The Kedoshim who are in the land, these holy people, they are my strength and they give me all that I desire. So the Radak says, and the way we just inflected it and the way Rashi inflects it is in a positive way. The Radak says, no, this is still part of the fundamental error that the speaker made in line 2, and he's putting all of his faith in the human. It makes sense. It's good reading, right? My good is far away from you, and these people, Kedoshim, are not Kedoshim. They are Malachim, says the Radak. He's got there's this a conception of an equivalent of dochak. Dochak is something that's a hard reading or a forced reading. And if there were not a dochak in a reading, there would be no need for another one, but there always is. For the Radak, even though we feel the flow emotionally, psychologically, existentially from line 2 to 3, Kedoshim doesn't mean Malachim, right? Or it's hard to say that. And he continues, but what he has on his side is the next line, because he's continuing and referring back. This is a dochak for Rashi, right? Because he has to learn it. It goes back to this praise of the Kedoshim. And here in line 4, it says, look how they're trying to fetch it in the JPS translation. It says, let them suffer quickly. And so that goes much more with the flow of how the Radak is learning. Let them suffer, and I will not bring their blood offerings, and I will not even put their names I will not carry their names on my mouth. So I will not bring their offerings to the temple. Don't know why that's significant, right? I have nothing to do with them. I think maybe the implication is, I don't know. I mean, how far? So these Kedoshim they're pagans, and David is distinguishing himself from the pagan. And he's saying, I'm not part of that. I won't even mention their names. They're not even part of my language. They're not part of my sphere. I like that. And then David goes on and says, Adonai Hashem, manat chelki v'kosi. God gives me my portion, the portion of my portion. It seems like a little redundant here. V'kosi, and my cup. My portion and my cup, maybe that's even extra, something even more that I'm getting, or renders it physical. As Ed pointed out, we see a lot of physical images in this poem. They're very physical. Ata tomich gorlayich. You are the one who guides me in my fate. Now, the Radak, what do we need the Radak here? This compressed in these two words is an hour class. And during that hour, we would look at Paradise Lost and its various interpreters over the centuries. Because Milton is also trying, following David, to talk about providence and free will at the same time. And it's impossible to do that. If you're a philosopher, you know that, right? It doesn't work. If you're a poet, however, it works. Tomich, because that implies God's providence. Gorelei is my fate, my choice. And how do those things work together? And here is, again, physical. Chavilim nafluli. These packages have fallen to me. It's like pennies from heaven. The ne'imim, very physical. Afna chalak shapra alai. And my inheritance is so pleasing, lovely, beautiful. I think this David is a little bit of a hedonist here. Comely, bright, listening. Yeah, I mean, I'm not so sure how different David is from his soul. He also is, he's very involved in the physical. Remember in the first line, he talks to his nefesh. Let's continue. Avarech, I will bless God, Asher Ya'atzani, who guides me. And the Radak says about this, understand it in the same way that I explained Tomaich Goralai, and I just kind of paraphrased it, meaning it's dealing with the same issue of there simultaneously being a God who is providential and an individual who chooses out of free will. And that actually is achieved in Psalms. It's not achieved by philosophers, but again, it's achieved by poetry. And that's why we should all emulate David. Af leilot yisruni kalayosei. And at night, we're going with one interpretation, lots of ways of going with this, but we're continuing in our direction. And at nighttime, my conscience is surly, right? It's admonishing is not bad. It admonishes me. It's more physical though, I think. And at nighttime, when it's quiet and I have no other distractions, I cannot sleep at night. I mean, the two parts of the line really, they come together, but there's also a dissonance because having the divine implicit in the human mind, right? There's a dissonance to that. And here, let's just read this again. My conscience. Where is my conscience? So my conscience here is, so the books here, the Art Scroll, which I use all the time, by the way, says, oh, well, ancient times they thought of the intelligence emanating in the kidneys. And you're like, okay, but, go further because the kidneys are a physical internal organ, right? It's not the brain, it's not the mind. Did Chazal somehow think, oh, we don't have brains, our brains are in our kidneys? They did not think that, right? They did not think, they were not morons. So they are, right? That's we have to always assume that in everything that we're reading together, they are as smart as we are, right? I mean, that's the beginning of the hermeneutics of generosity. You should always go even further. My conscience admonishes me at night. So conscience here is very physical. It's very physical. It's felt. It's bodily. You see there starts with this distinction between soul and body, and here they're coming together. But even as they're coming together, they're at war with one another, right? Because he's restless. Shiviti Hashem lenegdi tamid. I place you in front of me all of the time. Ki mi yamini bal emot. Because on my right side, you are on my right side, and you are not letting me stumble. So two images of the divine here. The one who is constantly connecting in front of me, looking at me, watching me go forward, connecting, right? As I go forward, God is with me. And then there's the other who's holding me up, right? And obviously it's one God, right? But you see that David is personifying the divine in two different ways. One on this level of going forward into the future and mindful. Okay, is that Shiviti? I placed, I placed, I don't know. Yeah. So the two aspects, one is the divine in front, and then there's also the divine who's helping me walk so I don't totter. And there's a kind of going back and forth. And here we go, 3 more lines. L'chein, samach libi, in the physical, my heart rejoiced, v'yagel kavodi. So what is kavod? Kavod is honor. Kavod is weightiness. Now, editors who have seen Psalms enough and seen Tanakh enough know that the best way of translating kavodi is my soul, my heart, my whole being. Okay, they're most. If you look at the Rishonim, they will say nefesh. Or actually, let's look at the Rishonim. I think kavodi. I think there is an interesting radak on this. Right. The Yagel Kvodi, Hu Neshama. Shehi Kavod Haguf. Went from the kidneys, and now the kavod and neshama and nefesh. Nefesh, I have been told by one of my many Psalm posse members, nefesh is like more of a life force. It was critical when she said that. It's a force of the soul associated with the body. In Chumash, it's nefesh is blood, it's strange, right? So on the one hand, it's soul, but it's still physicality. And neshama is already going up, right? Neshama, in the beginning of Bereshit, God breathes his breath into the human. That is the neshama. These are philosophical moments in Tanakh. We just don't read them like that unless we read them like that. And these texts are begging to be read like that. They're begging to be read in a way that we are connecting with the text. And maybe that's different from what I'm describing now. But I think the more we understand the issues that we're discussing, the better you can connect with the text. L'chein samach libi v'yagel kvodi, the neshama, the physical, but also going up. Af besari yishkon levetach. Even my flesh, even what I've had in my body, even it's flesh, right? It's very physical here. I'm turning into the physical. I'm worried about the physical. And it goes up. V'yagel kvodi af besari yishkon levetach. Even my body will rest. The Yeshkon is bothering me because normally I would think of the Shekhinah that would be Shochen in the Beit HaMikdash, right? And here the verb is Yeshkon, that the physical is going itself to be okay, to be, it's not going to be compromised. Body, spirit. Hilot hazov nafshi. I'm trying to get the drama here right. So that you will not abandon my soul to the pit. You will not lo titen chasidcha lirot shachat. You will not abandon my soul to the pit, to hell, to the place of no return, the place without memory. Lo titen chasidcha lirot shachas. You will not give your Holy One, you will not make him see shachat. And as Ed pointed out, shachat almost sounds like we're already seeing it. The visual metaphor just bothers me again. Right, so it's all very physical here. Then he says, Todienu orach chaim, savas machot. Let's fulfill we want to be fulfilled in our joys. Esponecha imot. Wow, that line just blows me away. I'm sorry. It just takes you in so many different places. First, it's very like, the Rashi says this is a statement. Radak naturally says it's a question. Todienu orach chaim, show us the way, let us, and here again, where the physical here, where is the pleasure coming? Sava smachot, that just sounds like fulfillment, smachot, rejoicing. There's simcha on Yom Tov. Right? Yom Tov the simcha of Yom Tov is celebrated with the spirit and the body, food. So there is that aspect of the physical here as well. Smachot et panecha. How are we learning this? Et panecha ni'imot b'yiminecha netzach. I guess that's how you have to read it. Et panecha ni'imot. In your face is delight. Have we seen that word before, delight? Yes, we did. When those packages fell down. Remember those packages fell down? Chabilim, and they were delightful. And those are very, very physical. And here again, we're in the physical. But notice how the physical and the spiritual now at the end of the poem are kind of coming together. Et panecha ni'imot. I mean, this guy is still very much in the physical world, this David. And then he goes on and says, ni'imot b'minecha netzach. In your presence. Let's just look at another translation. This is Robert Alter. He gets the poetry, right? Make me know the path of life. Joy overflows in your presence. Delights in your right hand forever. Well done, right? Delights in your right hand forever. He gets the verb placement. He gets the forever proper, and the forever is almost a punctuation mark here. Another brilliant point, Ed and I learned this before. We have bimincha here, right? Here, how did Alter do it? Delights in your right hand. Delights in your right hand forever. Right, so these delights are now in the right hand. Remember earlier in the poem, he's being helped along, right? That physicality. Here, the right hand is something entirely different. That's why philosophers can't do this, because it's poetry. And the last word, b'yiminecha netzach, forever. I'm working on this. And I did see in this, the Maharal of Prague has a book called Netzach Yisrael. So I looked at the introduction because this word Netzach has been bothering me. It appears in weird places. When the Rashaim are talking about the future, they often talk about Netzach. I mean, it has positive connotations. The Maharal says it's associated with two things. One is the destruction of Rome, by which he means whatever he was living through and what we're living through, meaning the end of days. And the other is the flourishing of Jerusalem, right? So there are two aspects, one temporal and one spatial, right? Both are physical still. They're both physical. It's Le'olam Va'ed, that we know, that's like eternity. That's God in infinitude. Netzach, forever, it's almost I think that you could almost define it as a finite version of infinity, a finite version of the infinite. And it's appropriate that it ends in this way because we are still very much in this world. Some of the Meforshim, some of the commentators say that the word michtam at the beginning gives this psalm a special status. If I were to say what the special status is I would say it really reflects David's really human depth. Because the best he can do by the end, I mean, listen, it's a high level, but he's very much enmeshed in the physical. I don't know, man, I'm not sure about David's consciousness though, but we see that at the very beginning of the poem, the good of man and the holiness of God are separated. And somehow through this poem, they do come together. They are brought together. The pit is present, but you don't go down into it. It's almost like, I think that Lirot Shachat is, you will not see destruction, death, hell, but you did see it. And this is it. I mean, people who've read Paradise Lost, right, know that Milton not only sees hell, he takes us into hell. Dante also does the same thing. Not only sees hell, but brings us into it. And one of the things the pilgrim says at the very beginning of the poem is he says, I looked back to, he says that to Virgil. I looked back, I saw where I was, or I saw where I can be. So the way of life, or chaim, enjoy the physical. In your presence is our delights, and they're guaranteed by your right hand forever. Beautiful, right?